Welcome to Tech Smarter. This is the show where we talk with the operators, the innovators, and the investors who are shaping the future of aging services. I'm your host, Abby Ritchie. I'm the tech guru here at the Smarter Service. And this episode today is sponsored by Leading Age Arizona. And the show is brought to you by the Smarter Service. Now, if you are a senior living operator and you're struggling to provide consistent and patient tech support for your residents and staff, the Smarter Service is the premier tech concierge provider. We are dedicated to empowering older adults with the tech skills they need to use in today's world. If you have any questions, go ahead and DM me Smarter and I will get back to you. Now, today we are diving deep into the heartbeat of senior living. And we're talking about the intersection of resident joy and business intelligence. We're joined by two heavyweights from Sentrics, and I want to go ahead and bring them on. Welcome to Tech Smarter, Rick and Jason.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Please, Rick, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know how you landed in senior living at Sentrics and what you do to help communities across the country.
Well, my introduction to senior living was first through my grandparents as they moved into one of the very first CCRCs in the state of Pennsylvania, and didn't know that it was preparing me for 30 years in senior living, but it darn sure did. I got to see the entire process, from independent living all the way to skilled and memory care at the time. From a Sentrics perspective, I've had all kinds of roles from business development to management, and have had, impacts on products that we make, as well as the impacts that we have on residents. What keeps me going every day, though, is the actual impact that we have on residents and families, and knowing what that trickle down effect is. And because I've lived it, not only from my grandparents' side of things, but I've lived it now through my parents being in senior living as well. And just really enjoy the people that we get to work with and knowing that we have impact on people's lives, even though we never meet them.
I love that. I love that. I had an experience like this also with my grandparents when they were transitioning from living at home to senior living. And it was quite an eye-opening experience for me. I didn't know, like you, it was preparing me to understand this at a much more deeper, compassionate level, but I'm grateful for it. And Jason, how about you? Please introduce yourself.
Jason Gephart. I've been at Sentrics for 12 years. I got here by, I would say, serendipitous happen chance. There were some inventory issues, and that was my background. So I was brought on to fix some inventory issues, led the supply chain for 5 years, and I've had the honor of serving this industry directly in sales for 7 years.
Wonderful. I want to start talking about entertainment, because when we start looking at Sentrics and all that Sentrics does, the backbone of it truly is providing content and connection within senior living communities. Is that pretty much accurate, or is there more to it?
I mean, I would say from the entertainment side of things, it's 50% of Sentrics, which makes up 50%. But it is a big part. It is the one thing that you can guarantee is used by every resident every single day. No questions asked. The average resident watches 5 hours of television a day. And so when you work that into, being up for 8 hours, it's the majority of the day that they're ingesting some type of content through the TV.
Yes, TV is something that they're really comfortable with, something they're really used to. They love it. They grew up with it. They go to it 100%. And it's like a bridge, the first bridge to the digital information and also their level of comfort. Why is it so critical to prioritize entertainment quality within Sentrics for residents?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things. First of all, entertainment is the most adopted and the most willingly funded technology in senior living across the space. Every community has it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. but it's also the most familiar, like you stated. Residents not only are just used to it, they trust it. And in some cases, it can even lower anxiety and even reduce some friction that can happen. When you think about when people move into a retirement community or into assisted living or what have you, it's a big shakeup. We're totally changing everything they do, right? Like the meals are different, how their place gets cleaned, what time that there's even activities available versus in their home, like where they live. They've lived in a house now for 20 some years. The TV is the constant. It's the one thing that they, along with their belongings, their knickknacks, and because most of the time their bed is being replaced, their sofa, it's the one constant thing they know they can turn on and experience the same thing that they did at home.
I got a little story outside of like the resident on that one, Abby. It's important for the visitors, family and friends, to come visit them in the communities. Growing up in the farmlands of Indiana, that's a easy way of saying the boonies. We had an antenna, we got 6 channels. When we went to Mimi and Papa's, they had cable. They treated me like luxury. Like, we went there, you want a candy. You want a Werther's, you want an ice cream sandwich. I took those, but I also watched their cable. It's like those changing expectations in life. You want to have that visitor experience at the community as well.
I never thought about that point of view before. We're always talking about the residents and the staff, but we can really focus on how we are impacting families while they are there. And, one thing that we've noticed at the Smarter Service is, we like to set up our tech desk. It's like a Genius bar at the communities in a place where it's heavily trafficked, so that when families are coming in and they're doing tours and they're seeing that their parents are going to receive tech support, they are so relieved. They're so thankful. And, it's that same bit of tech support that comes into play when someone needs to use their TV. TV has gotten a lot more complicated with the remotes and the inputs and all that. And if we can't provide them with that level of comfort and understanding, we're missing a part of serving them.
And visitation. I mean, I've never met a community that thought visitation was as high as it should be, right? You have some residents that never see a visitor ever. Some people live around the corner and they come daily, sometimes weekly, maybe only monthly, even though they live around the corner. But if we can change the experience where, like Jason was saying, you have a grandchild come and visit their grandmother, because she's capable of creating an environment that is welcoming to that person, it's also helpful to keep them coming back, because it's super important to the overall, psyche and experience that resident has.
So sweet. It reminds me back in the day when I used to provide the tech support at the communities, and I'd bring my kiddos with me there after school and have them in the library. And, some of the residents would come over and bring them cookies and let them read books and magazines. So yeah, it's like when you can provide that type of comfort to anyone who's coming in, it's really an all-encompassing, comforting environment for sure. I want to talk about, as we move into, we're in January of 2026, what are some strategic investments that ensures a community isn't just buying gadgets, but it's actually buying outcomes? Jason?
Yeah. What I've seen in the market is data, right? Everybody's paying for it today, not necessarily utilizing it. And it's not presented in an insightful fashion. So if they want to utilize it, staff have to pull up 20 different charts from 20 different technologies and try to read through it. Operators out there should assess their current solutions. It's more economic to do so, and see if they can aggregate that data. It'll be less economically impactful to start grabbing it.
Yeah, I'd just add to that, just as we're talking about entertainment and investment, Linkage just did a big report on some technology. And one of the things that they showed in that communication and entertainment outpaces health and safety in both usage and in spending. I would have never guessed that, honestly, and quite interesting to see that, and it shows the importance of that. But as you're looking at investment, I think, in this day and time, it's super easy to look at something and say, wow, look at the shiny new thing. And the shiny new thing isn't always the best thing. And it's part of that is because of experience. Being in here 30 years, I've seen a lot of what I thought was really cool things not make it, for a varying of reasons. But it's super important to understand that when you're making that investment, how are you going to get your ROI? It's got to reduce complexity rather than just adding more tools to your toolbox. We barely can use all the tools that we have. So how are you going to reduce those types of things? How are you looking at the overall outcomes about higher engagement, lower staff friction? Nobody is going to say that there's not a turnover problem in senior living. We've been talking about it for the 30 years I've been here. Not to say that it hasn't changed somewhat, but we haven't found the silver bullet for it yet. And then, overall outcomes too, from a buying perspective, is can you get more services from one place than you can another, so you can reduce the number of invoices, reduce the number of places people need to call for help, et cetera. Like, those things are important to look at when you're talking about the investment and the gap that may or may not be there.
Yes, one thing that I didn't hear you say, but was lurking in my mind, was adoption, right? It's yes, you can make this investment. Yes, it can have all the bells and whistles, but if there isn't adoption involved, it's going to just be flat. And I read somewhere that out of the engagement platforms that communities are using, typically only 10% of the features are being utilized. And a lot of that has to do with adoption. It has to do with staff training. It has to do with resident education. And it's just so important. If the technology doesn't close the digital divide, it's not an investment, it's a cost.
That's right. And adoption is the biggest issue that we see as a tech company. Gosh, I could go back and look. I did a talk at Leading Age National. It was probably 10 years ago, specifically about adoption. And adoption, it doesn't matter how good the technology is. If adoption is not woven into the fabric of your operations, then it doesn't take place. And there is no pixie dust, right? I'd love to say that, hey, you can buy technology and all of a sudden it changes overnight. Good technology is disruptive, and disruptive is in your operations, in your daily use. And so you have to be ready to be disrupted. And I think if you look back at the last 6 years in this industry, there hasn't been a lot of bandwidth for disruption. It's just trying to, from an operation perspective, keep your head above water, get the residents in, finding staffing. And so to make big, huge changes. But I feel like we're kind of on I'll say a nice upswing now, to where I think some folks can really pay attention to that. And you've seen it in the industry. You've seen some technology being adopted and really being used, and it's exciting to see.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of band-aiding going on all over the place, just reactive band-aiding. What are some of the red flags, Rick, that tell an executive it's really time to reevaluate their community's technology and entertainment solutions?
So let's just say from the entertainment side, I'll let Jason kind of talk about the life safety side of things. But the entertainment side is kind of interesting. It's always going to be contract driven, because your standard contract in the industry is 5 years. Not to say that there aren't 3-year agreements, and that's kind of the other standard. So you're really looking at 20% of your portfolio turning over on entertainment contracts each year. And depending on the size of your company, depends on how big of an impact that is. It could be one building, it could be 40, it could be more. And so at any time from that perspective, I would say that, the thing that we're straddling today that is very, very difficult from a technology perspective, and we've had some very interesting conversations with operators about this, is that the residents that we have in the communities today and the residents that you're now marketing to and having come in are kind of two different animals when it comes to technology. And how do you straddle that? Because you don't want to upset the residents that you have, but you have to be able to attract the residents that are coming in. And so if you don't have options, like, no, sorry, this is a one size fits all product, and we don't have any flexibility or customization, like, it's definitely time to look at that. And contract driven, obviously, you should be looking at from an entertainment side. You should always look at that because it makes a lot of sense. I will also say from a standardization perspective, which a lot of companies are very interested in, it's very difficult to do that in the standard way people buy entertainment. But working with a company like us allows you to actually standardize across the nation and be able to understand what's going into each one of those communities.
Yeah, on the safety side, I'd go back to reassessing your current solution. If you put in a solution 10 years ago and it's still working for you today, you might have a viewpoint of that vendor, but that vendor more than likely has some features that you can turn on, and it's more economic to do so.
Gotcha. Jason, how does your Ensure platform practically empower a caregiver on the floor to provide a faster response or a better outcome?
So what we've seen is, going back to Rick's point of staff turnover, even shift change data or events don't pass through. So the Ensure mobile app will empower the care staff to respond with who initiated the alert, where they are down to the room level, and even events that have occurred recently. Mrs. Smith fell this morning, or she was feeling dizzy last night. So we'll put that information in their hands so they can respond appropriately when they get to the resident. Even with integrations, we can put in their hands if they have allergies or medication changes or recent hospital stays.
Was this a big development for you guys, realizing, if I can make this app oriented? Is that how you access Ensure?
Jason, you mind if I take that one?
Yeah.
At least start it off. So I will say this: the app has been around for a while, right? That is not new. But what is new is the insights that can be driven from it. And Abby, you talked about how does a community get into this? It is if you looked at how a lot of communities today, it's still the majority of them are not using a mobile application. Buildings that are purchasing new systems, a lot of them are. But if you look at, Sentrics has over 3,000 nurse call systems deployed across the country. And the majority of them are not using mobile app at this time. They're using things like radios, even pagers. And so the infrastructure itself inside the senior living space really does need to change to be able to do this. But the app itself, it's a game changer from not only the staffing side, but arming the staff with information that they don't have today. Was it a big undertaking when it first came out? No, not really, because it was pretty basic. But in today's world, with integrations as well as, intelligent insights that can be brought across it, yes, that's been I won't say it's a heavy lift, but it's definitely been something that's been really interesting to be a part of. And the one thing that Sentrics has that I'm very proud to be a part of, we've been collecting data on emergency call systems since 1997 in the cloud. The first time we talked to people about it, they're like, nobody's ever going to put anything in the cloud. It's not going to work.
Right.
We've been doing it since 1997, and we get millions of data points a year. And so we have access to all of that data for all of those years. So you want to talk about being able to physically talk about trends that are happening compared to, someone that's been collecting data maybe for a year and has a few hundred installations. We have the data, and it's been very interesting to see some of the outcomes that come from that.
Tell me, what have been some of the most surprising outcomes?
So I would say one of the ones that just kind of pops in my head real quick is about this, I'll call it symbiotic relationship between the actual response time a resident gets and their length of stay. And so we did Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a 2-year study across the portfolios that we see. And it was, there was a absolute correlation between response time and length of stay. And now, is that the only thing? No, absolutely not. But it's definitely an ingredient to it. And so we know that a lot of communities pay attention to that. And so if you can make a difference there, it has a financial impact on your business.
100%. We find this also at the Smarter service, where we're constantly collecting data on every touch point that's happening at a community. And for every tech concierge that's there tracking what they're helping a resident with, so that we can offset some of the various demands and the needs. Like maybe, 70% of in-home calls are about the TV, right? And so, how can we help create more solutions around that and address them head on? So that data works, but we don't have 30 years of data behind it like you do, like you guys do. I want to ask you, when it comes to staffing, because we talked about that and the challenges ongoing with staffing, how does the insights, Jason, gathered from your platforms allow a community to move towards smarter staffing and doing more with the team that they already have?
Along with the studies we've done that Rick was talking about, we also noticed that it's about an average cost of $10,000 for a staff to turnover. We're not here to solve that by any means, but we can track and give our clients insights into staff that are working more than other staff, right? It's, indicating staff turnover before it happens, or staff overwork.
Yeah, obviously, you get a lot of, it never really changes from business to business, but you have, a certain number of people that are working harder than others. And sometimes that's because they have more experience and they can do it. And then other people are new and they're, just trying to learn. But you can't keep that up forever because that's how you get staff burnout. So being able to look at patterns, and some of those patterns aren't just things like the number of calls, but like looking at some of the data, are the residents that this person is taking care of on a regular basis, are they higher acuity, therefore they demand more time? How do you spread that load amongst other staffs? The other thing is using insights instead of worrying about training all the time, because that's a problem that we all have, is how do you keep things up to date? Because technology is changing all the time. How do you put in the hand of a caregiver the phone a friend? So when they say, I know I learned this, but I don't remember, how can you just give a very simple voice command into your mobile device and say, I don't remember how to, and it tells them exactly how to do it. Or, hey, I'm interested in how I noticed that this resident is using the call system more. What can you tell me about the data that you see from that resident, right? Just ask. Instead of having to go run a report and read the tea leaves, for lack of better sense.
I love it. I want to switch now and talk a little bit more about the AI and AVA AI and how that's changing the way residents interact with their environment and what that means in regards to their daily independence. Rick?
Yeah, that really is the phone a friend that we were talking about, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought maybe there was another name for it, but phone a friend. There you go.
I mean, most people that are listening remembers the game show, phone a friend and figure out what the answer is. Turnover, we've talked about as an issue. Training, finding the time just to train somebody. It's not like the communities have hours upon hours for somebody to sit around and learn things. And everybody has a call system experience when they come, once they've worked in this industry, but not all call systems work the same. Not all, all technology solutions, EHRs even, right? Yes, they all have the same information, but they don't all work the same. And so how do you train these caregivers to be able to do that? And you're only going to remember a certain percentage, and it's a very low percentage, right, that you typically walk away from and then keep in your brain. So how do we give them a super easy solution to be able, in a device that they're already carrying around, being able to ask a very simple question and effectively do their job? And that's what Ava's point is, put all the database and information about the solutions that they have in place, and allow them to ask away whatever questions they need to be able to get the solutions.
I love it. Thank you. I want to shift now and talk about the Florida market. You're both in Florida, and you're serving older adults throughout the country. What differences do you notice in the Florida market that sets it apart in terms of bridging the digital divide?
Yeah, we don't see much difference in the Florida market, but the differences we do see is it's more competitive. It's more dense as far as how many communities are in the areas, and with that, higher expectations.
Yeah, and I would add to just talk about density. From where I'm sitting in my office right now, I can walk to 3 retirement communities in less than 3 minutes.
It's like that in Scottsdale too, actually. It's rather dense here too. So we're seeing higher expectations for digital inclusion, which really helps us to sharpen our model to ensure that residents, as they get more tech savvy, that the service level keeps pace with those expectations for sure. And I want to shift now into talking about some outcomes. So when all these pieces that you have at Sentrics works together, they all work together, what's the ultimate outcome that wouldn't be possible without your tech stack?
I think we'll go back to COVID a little bit. With our tech stack, we're drawing in the social determinants of health prior to a clinical need. So we can passively grab behavior changes, need changes, and give those insights to the staff before there is a negative event.
Yeah, so to kind of add to that a little bit, when I would go visit my parents, they were always in their room. And the reason they were in their room is because they didn't want to miss me when I got there, right? They were looking forward to the interaction with people from outside.
Okay.
And socialization is one of the main reasons that people move into retirement communities, or families put their loved one into a retirement community. In today's world, there's no measure of socialization. We don't have the ability to do that. And so with technology in the right way, we can tell how much time somebody is spending inside versus outside their apartment. How much are they interacting with other residents, with caregivers? How much time are they watching television? Has that reduced? Even with the right technology in place, we can even tell you the type of things that they're ingesting on the television, right? What type of programming are they looking at, and how has that changed? And so to be able to see around that corner of, hey, socialization has declined and television viewing has increased, and maybe they're watching, for example, more religious type things. What's going on? How do we go have a conversation with this resident about what's changed in their life that is making this change? So that you can't do that unless you have it all integrated. And that's the one thing that I think is super important as we all move forward, is like, how do you have these integrations, and how do you also keep it simple?
100%. Yeah, I love that. How can people get in touch with you for more information, Rick and Jason?
Yeah. I think they're going to share our website, but www.sentrics.com, and I see our emails flashing down along the bottom. That's a great way to get in touch with us.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It's totally clear that when we combine the right tools for instance, with a right strategy, that we start to close that socialization, the digital divide for good. And we are grateful that you joined us today. We're grateful that Leading Age Arizona is sponsoring this episode, and we will see you all right back here next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.